Tonight, we return to a story that has haunted the American conscience for decades. A story of two lives cut short, a nation divided, and a trial that became one of the most scrutinized events in modern history. But behind all the headlines and courtroom drama, there remains a simple, painful question. How do we remember the victims at the center of it all? Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman lost their lives on a warm June night in 1994. One was a mother trying to rebuild her life after years of turmoil. The other, a young man delivering a forgotten pair of eyeglasses, unaware that his final act of kindness would place him at the heart of a crime scene that shocked the world. Their story, though often overshadowed, deserves to be told with clarity and dignity. To understand the tragedy, we must begin with Nicole's life in the years before the murders. She had been married to former football star and actor O.J. Simpson. Their relationship, once celebrated in the media, was far from peaceful. Over time, police reports documented repeated incidents of domestic violence and calls for help. Friends described her as someone who lived in fear, someone whose private struggles contrasted sharply with the glamorous world surrounding them. By 1992, Nicole had divorced Simpson. She moved into her own home, raising their two children while trying to create a more stable environment. Yet many who knew her said the sense of danger never fully went away. She tried to move forward, but traces of the past continued to follow her. On the evening of June 12, 1994, Nicole had dinner with her family. Her mother accidentally left her eyeglasses at the restaurant. A young waiter named Ron Goldman offered to return them later that night. He was just 25 years old, energetic, and full of ambition. Some described him as the kind of person who always helped others without hesitation. No one could have imagined that such a simple gesture would place him at the center of a tragedy. Just before midnight, both Nicole and Ron were attacked outside her home in Brentwood. The violence was swift and devastating. Investigators later determined that Ron likely fought with all the strength he had, a young man trying desperately to survive. Nicole, too, had no chance to flee. Within minutes, 2 lives were gone. The discovery of the bodies the next morning sent shockwaves through Los Angeles. Detectives identified Simpson as a person of interest almost immediately. Evidence began to point in a clear direction. Blood drops at the scene, a glove, footprints, and traces found inside Simpson's vehicle and home. The investigation moved quickly, and the world watched every development with growing intensity. 5 days later, authorities expected Simpson to surrender. Instead, he became the subject of a slow-speed pursuit on the freeways of Southern California. Millions of viewers across the nation followed the white Ford Bronco as it moved through the city, turning a criminal case into a moment of cultural spectacle. That dramatic chase ended at Simpson's home, where he was arrested. What followed was one of the longest and most publicized trials in American history. Prosecutors argued that the evidence formed a powerful and undeniable narrative. They described a pattern of domestic violence, a history of jealousy, and a night in which anger may have spiraled into deadly rage. The DNA evidence, new to many jurors at the time, linked Simpson to the crime with startling probability. But the defense challenged every step of the investigation. They raised doubts about the handling of evidence, questioned the credibility of key police officers, and pointed to flaws in collection procedures. Their strategy was methodical, focusing on the chain of custody, contamination risks, and the possibility of mishandling. The courtroom became a battleground not only of facts, but of perception. Throughout months of testimony, the victims themselves were often overshadowed. Nicole's story, her attempts to seek safety, her fear of violence, was sometimes lost amid legal arguments. Ron Goldman, a young man who simply showed up at the wrong moment, was frequently reduced to vague references rather than spoken of as a real person with a family, dreams, and a life ahead of him. His father and sister attended court every day, listening, watching, and hoping that justice would prevail. When the verdict was announced in October 1995, the nation erupted. Simpson was acquitted of both murders. The reaction was divided, emotional, and deeply influenced by social tensions in the country. Many believed the justice system had failed the victims. Others saw the verdict as a reflection of long-standing distrust in law enforcement, especially after high-profile incidents of police misconduct in Los Angeles. Even though Simpson walked free from the criminal courtroom, the legal saga was far from over. In 1997, the families pursued a civil, wrongful death. Lawsuit. That trial, operating under a different legal standard, found Simpson liable for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. He was ordered to pay substantial damages, though the emotional wounds endured by the families could never be measured in financial terms. The years that followed brought more questions, more documentaries, more interviews, and more attempts to understand what truly happened. Public discussions often returned to the same themes: the evidence presented at trial, the role of domestic violence, the fairness of the legal process, and the profound impact of celebrity on justice. Yet one element remained constant: the deep sadness surrounding the loss of two lives and the lasting grief of the families left behind. For many, Nicole's story stands as a reminder of the dangers faced by victims of domestic violence and how their warnings can go unheard or unprotected. For others, Ron represents the tragic possibility of being caught in the wrong place at the wrong moment. Both narratives underscore how fragile life can be and how crime reshapes not only families, but entire communities. Today, more than 30 years later, the case remains a powerful part of American memory. It forces us to confront difficult truths about violence, justice, and how society responds when tragedy collides with fame. It asks us to remember that behind every headline, there are real people whose stories deserve to be told with compassion. As we reflect on the aftermath, we are reminded that justice is not only defined by verdicts, but also by how we honor the lives of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Nicole's children grew up without their mother. Ron's family continues to carry the weight of his loss, and a nation continues to revisit one of the most painful chapters of its modern history. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can uncover more stories together. This content is compiled and analyzed based on publicly available information and open discussions.